Hey everybody, I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here today. Today what you're going to be looking at is what is a polynomial. A polynomial is a special type of function, and it typically has many terms in it. So poly being many, and nomial being an equation. So the only catch is that each of these terms, they typically have varying exponents with the x. And they are always positive whole number exponents. So examples of polynomials that you guys are familiar with would be something like f of x is equal to 2x plus 5, so a linear equation. When we look at an equation like this, that would be x to the first power. The second equation, f of x is equal to x squared plus 7x plus 12, a quadratic. When we have a quadratic equation, that is a polynomial. We have 2 as an exponent, we have 1 as the exponent, and then we have a term with no x. The third and final equation that we have up here, we've got a really big one. The large equation down here at the bottom, where we have 4x to the 5th, 5x to the 4th, minus 3x squared, plus 21x, and that would be 21x to the first power, and then minus 9. Now there are a couple of just basic vocabulary words that go along with a polynomial. The first being, the degree. The degree is the largest exponent in the equation of x. So when I look at the first equation, the purple equation, that would be degree 1. The second equation would be degree 2, because that's the largest exponent in that problem. And even though the third equation has a whole lot of exponents, the largest one is 5, so this would be degree 5. Okay, our next term that we have is the leading coefficient. So leading being the term in front. Now when equations are in what we call standard form being that the equation is in order. So this is very similar to what we were doing with the quadratic formula. The standard form, you want the equation to have the exponents in decreasing order. So when everything is in the correct order, the leading coefficient is going to be the term in the very front. So the leading coefficient of the first equation would be 2. The leading coefficient of the second equation would be 1. And the leading coefficient of the third equation would be 4. Okay. The next thing that we have is what's called a constant. A constant is a value with no x. A constant is always going to be the same. And so it's never going to change. It's always going to be the same value every single time. So the linear equation, the purple equation, is always going to have plus 5. The quadratic is always going to have plus 12. The blue equation is always going to finish with minus 9. Those would be the constants on each equation. The last thing that you need to be able to identify is what's called a term. Now a term is how many of parts are there in the equation. So the first equation would have 2 terms in it. The second equation, we have the x squared, we have the 7x, and the 12 for 3 terms. The third equation, we have 4x to the 5th, we have 5x to the 4th, we have negative 3x squared, we have 21x, we have minus 9 for 5 terms. So those should be something pretty easy to identify. The next thing that we have are what makes something not a polynomial. So things that are not polynomials is you cannot have x with a fraction or a decimal exponent. So you're not going to have x to the 3 over 2 power. You're not going to have x to the 1.5 power. That's not allowed. You're not going to have any special functions that are involved inside of it. So there's no absolute values, there's no square roots, there's no logs or any other weird stuff. It's just x with positive whole number exponents. The next thing, x cannot be an exponent, such as 2 to the x power. That's not allowed. And you cannot have division by x, such as 1 over x. Okay, x is never going to be at the bottom of the fraction on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do just a very quick example. We're just going to identify a few things, and that's going to be the end of it. Okay, so on this equation, on this polynomial, I want to do several things. Okay, the first thing that I want to do is I want to put in standard form. The second thing that I'm going to do is I want to identify the leading coefficient. I want to identify the degree. I want to identify the number of terms. And finally, I want to identify the constant at the end. So the polynomial that I'm going to have is I'm going to have x squared minus 3 plus 2x to the 5th plus 7x to the 4th minus 12x. So let's start with the standard form. Okay, standard form means the exponents are in decreasing order. So my first term here, I can see the largest exponent would be this positive 2x to the 5th, followed by the next term. After 5, I'll be looking for the next largest being x to the 4th, so plus 7x to the 4th. The next largest after that, I don't see any third powers, but I do see an x squared. So I'm going to put my positive x squared next. After my positive x squared, I'm going to look for just a regular old x, so minus 12x. And then we have minus 3 as the constant of this equation. Okay, there's standard form. We just put it in order from biggest exponent to no exponent, or no even x at all. So when I look at it, I want to identify a few things. Okay, the first thing that I want to be able to identify is what is the leading coefficient. Well, when everything's put in order, the very first thing is a 2. So there's my leading coefficient. I'm going to abbreviate that as LC. The next thing I have is my degree. The degree is what is the biggest exponent in this. That's a 5. And so since the largest exponent in this problem was a 5, that tells us the degree was 5. Next thing it said was find the number of terms here. Number of terms, how many parts are there in this equation? Well, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms here. So there are just literally 5 terms. That's it. And the last thing we have is the constant, and the constant being the term with no x. The term with no x is negative 3. And that's all you really got to do. Okay, now that's it for what is a polynomial. Please switch over to the addition and subtraction, and that'll be it.